for sure.
So what does Jody Keith have to do here, Corey, if he's going to take him down?
Get a really fast clock and kind of hope that Jackson misses on his draw, doesn't have, molds to four, that would help. And then post board, maybe some hand disruption to rip apart the cohesive draw of Jackson.
Yeah. All right, it's time for Standard. Everybody, the first round of Standard.
Yes.
Cedric and Monty, take it away.
Thank you so much, Maria, Corey, and Ailey. Cedric Phillips, Monty DeVuti. We are here in the booth. The first round of many in Standard is where we will begin here in round number 4. Jody Keith on one side, of course, doing fantastic in the Spotlight Series. Your friend?
Jackson Knorr.
Yes, the other. So we're going to see some players that are looking for a big top finish here on this level to kick things off in Standard. And on one side, we do have a very innovative deck from Jody Keith, which I'm sure is going to be kind of the center of attention here. On the other, Azorius Omniscience, about 20% of the metagame. If you're not playing Mountains, you're almost certainly playing this.
Yeah, and Jackson has already had a good year, came second at an RC, has his World Championship invite. Definitely a player that in the Pacific Northwest has been attending events in Seattle and in Portland for quite a while, building up that sort of resume, but this is his breakout year on the pro scene, which is really cool to see.
Now, what makes this matchup very difficult here for Jody, as Corey did mention, at the booth is pretty simple, which is what Jody's trying to do does not really interact with what Jackson's trying to do. Jackson is just a combo deck that is looking to put Omniscience onto the battlefield, and winning from there is pretty elementary. Jody, who I talked to at length yesterday at the Players Party, I was like, "What? I don't even know some of the cards in your deck, buddy. What are you doing?" And he's like, "I want to play against Izzet Phoenix as much as possible." That was his goal coming into the event. He feels like he's very favored in the matchup, felt very comfortable with what his deck is doing, which is fill the graveyard very quickly and to deploy some threats that are very cheap once a lot of creatures are in the graveyard, like Diamond Weapon. The problem is that Omniscience does not care about those cards, and Jody's clock, while you can have some very good draws, it's not the quickest clock to get onto the battlefield, and that's what makes the matchup so difficult, partner.
Yeah, Diamond Weapon definitely the biggest addition to the deck. We saw this deck in the hands of Zevin Faust, a similar build, of course, at the last Pro Tour where he made top 8. A big boost in power, getting to pick up Diamond Weapon and add to it, but ultimately the core of the deck is still the same, which is you're milling yourself to get under costed stats on the board, but you're not presenting that fast of a clock, and you're not interacting basically at all. Yes, you have some removal in the main deck. You have access to cards like Overwhelming Remorse, but that's not answering Omniscience. So once Jackson is doing his thing, which the deck is really built to do consistently over and over again, every game aiming for that top turn 4 slot, you really can't do anything about it. And that means that Jody has a really tough game 1 ahead of him. So then he has to hope that games 2 and 3 can offer him some help from the sideboard.
Now, in situations like this, and I talked to Jody about this at the Players Party, as I mentioned earlier, I was basically like, look, how do you feel this match is going to go for you? And he's like, it's horrible. He knows it's horrible. And one of his teammates was sitting across from him in this conversation and basically writing out the sideboard plans and, I'm going to do this against Omniscience. And Jody out loud just said to me, he's like, that's cope, bro. You're just coping. You're like, I get paired against Omniscience. I'm dust. It's fine. Like, Jody is just, he is resigned to his fate if he gets paired against Omniscience. Now, how can you win a matchup like this? It's a lot of what you mentioned, but the realistic answer to this is really simple. He's got to get really lucky.
Yeah.
Now, that can't happen. Take a look at what's going on with Jackson Knorr. Missed the 4th land drop. There's not an Omniscience in the graveyard just yet. Temporary lockdown does not manage Diamond Weapon. So there's an avenue here because one of those big boppers is on the battlefield right now for Jody.
Yeah, like, ultimately, however much we look at the matchup, however much we look at the theory of things, you got to play games of Magic.
Yes.
Right? Jackson mulligan to 6. Doesn't hit the Omniscience for a while. Jody gets onto the board. That's going to be a problem. Fortunately for Jackson in this spot, he does have a copy of Ifara's Dispersal in hand, so he's not just resigned to the fact of taking 8 from the Diamond Weapon here.
Correct.
But ultimately, if he's not able to hit the things he needs, he is going to fall behind.
There is the Dispersal. Does a nice job of delaying attacker here, as Jody's going to do a little more looking at things with Seed of Hope. Forgot exactly what he wants to do. Seed of Hope just a 1 of if memory does serve in this deck list, which is an instant. Mill 2 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards into your hand and gain a little bit of life. But again, the goal here for Jody is simple. do some milling, get a large threat onto the battlefield. The reason he feels so good about doing this against Izzet is that Izzet does go kind of wide, but his deck kind of goes really tall. And so if he can get a large threat on the battlefield and then accumulate multiple large threats, it's kind of difficult for Izzet to get through unless they have multiple Quarry Steel Cutters. And so his words, he's like, I am happy to play against that deck every round. I know exactly how it goes. Did a lot of testing on Arena. He told me one night he stayed up until like 3 or 4 in the morning, was like 23-2. Didn't even expect for the deck to do that well upon initial testing. And at some point he said, the results are undeniable. I know what I can beat. I know what I can't beat, or at least I'm unlikely to beat. And this is that matchup that he feels as though he is very unlikely to beat. But things aren't looking so bad right now, partner.
Yeah, definitely not looking bad right now. And we saw Jody actually struggling with a choice there between the land and the Souls of the Lost. And that makes sense. Souls of the Lost was one of the cards that really was highlighted as leveling up the deck at the last Pro Tour, because they were struggling against the more aggressive decks, and having Souls of the Lost as a 2-mana play that just grew huge, that was really good for them. Unfortunately, 2-mana is the not-so-sweet spot against temporary lockdown. So Jody could have picked up a threat there, but really looking to continue going bigger and dodging the main board-wide spell that Jackson has access to in the lockdown there.
So the Town Greeter's going to bite the dust. Jackson's going to fall down to 16. A little bit of damage sneaking on through. Wouldn't be surprised if maybe it's time for another Diamond Weapon to be deployed here. And there you go. Diamond Weapon is on the battlefield.
Yeah, we do also see the Huskbuster Swarm, one of the suite of oversized creatures that this deck has access to. Step 1 for Jackson, hit the 4th land, because he was really missing 2 pieces here. He was missing the Omniscience in the graveyard, and he was missing the 4th land. So now that he has it, he's able to play something like the Archaeologist here if he wants, just to mill himself and try to find that Omniscience. I think that's more important than trying to buy time with something like the Meringue River Agent, or using that as card draw.
Well, the Omniscience is now finally in the graveyard from the Archaeologist. Archaeologist will get a counter onto it. And now, of course, the question is Jody able to cross the finish line here with some sort of removal spell to maybe get those last points of damage through with Jackson at 16? I think the answer to that question, unfortunately for him, is no.
Yeah, it's unfortunately looking like the win is not coming here. And Jackson will happily just block as much damage as necessary here with the creatures available to him on board, or just take it.
And you mentioned the Huskbuster Swarm, which is a real mouthful to say. It is a 6/6 Menaced Death Touch, so it does make blocking at least a little bit difficult for the opponent. And you see Jackson is falling down to 2, and Jody, I'm sure, is thinking, is there any way I can get those last points of damage across? There's there's the Revenant there, but that is not going to get the job done. And now I think we're going to be off to the races. There's a Boiler's Awakening that's going to get back Omniscience. And now it's just a matter of if it's game over or not. And I think because there are 2 copies of the River Regent in hand alongside Roiling Dragonstorm, this might just be draw the entire deck.
Yeah, Jackson has access to everything he needs now. And you actually just saw the confidence from Jackson, his understanding of his own deck and how things play out from Jody's deck, that he just took that attack from the Diamond Weapon, said, I don't need that. And once you have the double Meringue River Regent, you are able to use one to bounce the other, and each time that you are playing one, you are, of course, able to return the Roiling Dragonstorm to your hand, continue drawing cards. So we're going to see Jackson have a position where he's going to go as deep into his deck as possible. Jody is able to use the Harvester here to try to remove the Omniscience in response. Yeah. And it's a question of what can Jackson do here to stop that from happening.
And remember, the Omniscience right now, with how Boiler's Awakening works, it's actually a creature.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's why Jody's able to use the Harvester of Misery and -2/-2 the Omniscience in response to the River Regent to try to actually kill the Omniscience. That's a weird thing to say because you see it on the battlefield. You don't see any power and toughness on the powerful enchantment, but you can interact with it, and that's what Keith is trying to do right now.
Yeah, and it is important to note here that because that's a channel on the Harvester.
Not even a spell?
Yeah, it's not even like Jackson can search for something like a Spell Pierce here and try to stop this easily. So it is going to be difficult for Jackson to stop this from happening. The question is, how much can he do in response in order to give himself another turn and get this back with another Boiler's Awakening if he's able to find one?
So those cards are going to go to the graveyard. And now,
potential for more maps, I guess.
There's the -2/-2. Omniscience is into the graveyard. Those creatures are going to get bounced to hand. The River Regent will continue to stay on the battlefield. You can see right now Jackson Knorr's hand, assuming it's correct, is an Omniscience and a Forest Dispersal and then a temporary lockdown. So Jody's got life to work with. We'll see him untap here and deploy some of these threats again on the cheap.
Yeah, one thing we know already is Jackson actually had to discard a Abuelo's Awakening earlier in the game. So there's only 2 copies in the deck right now. Of course, he does have ways to have some recursion and get back copies, but at the moment, he is in a position where he doesn't have the ability to get back the Omniscience in the graveyard immediately. And ultimately, Jody's deck, it doesn't cost much to deploy all of these threats again.
And that's exactly what he's going to do. So Diamond Weapon. And let me say it one more time with feeling, the Husk Burster Swarm.
Husk Burster Swarm
is back on the battlefield. That thing does have Menace and Death Touch. That's quite the elemental insect right there that's on the battlefield. A lot of fun to look at that thing. Didn't think we'd see this in the Pro Tour, that's for sure. But Keith is very happily registering this card and is very happy with it. And now, a little something from the graveyard. Put a counter on the Town Greeter, it looks like.
Yeah, facing down 3 blocker says, okay, I have a menace creature. This is essentially 4 attackers. Of course, I believe our hand graphic said Jackson has a copy as far as dispersal.
Doesn't.
But that was untrue.
Yeah, so Jody Keith is gonna win game number 1 here over Omniscience. Jody said, what happens if I get paired against Omniscience? Coat, baby, don't worry about it. I can't win. Well, Jody, you're up a game, and presumably things get at least a little better after sideboard. So Keith up 1, gonna be on the draw here. We'll take a look at the sideboard here, Monty, from you in just a moment. We'll kick things off with a little bit of scrying off the top, surveilling. That card's going to stay on top here for Jackson. We're going to head back Keith's way. What stands out to you in the sideboard besides perhaps this Duress that's being cast?
He definitely gets some help. Duress is a big one. He also gets access to Tear Asunder as an instant speed way to interact further. He does have access to cards like Scavenging Ooze that can interact with the graveyard in response to Abuelo's Awakening. And there's also 2 copies of Haywire Might. So there's definitely a lot of help for Keith in the sideboard, but ultimately it's not quite cope, but it is the type of situation where you have a general game plan from your opponent that's really tough, and then you have some number of answers.
Souls of the Lost is now onto the battlefield. Additional cost to cast it. You discard a card or sacrifice a permanent. And this thing's going to start getting a little big, getting in the red zone here. So there it comes. You mentioned Haywire Might. Looks like that was Jody's draw step alongside Scavenging Ooze and another copy of Husk Burster Swarm.
Nailed it.
In hand.
Next time, no laughing. You'll get it.
I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah. No, you're almost there.
As there is Scavenging Ooze. And will Jody play anything else? Looks like the answer is no. So we head back Jackson's way. And it's going to be an Overlord. That's going to bring a couple of little bozos along with it.
Yeah, and you're seeing the difficult decisions that come playing a deck like this as Azorius Omniscience, where you're a combo deck, so you need certain resources, but the duress taking away the temporary lockdown means that now Jody can run out a board like this, and Jackson is in trouble.
And there goes temporary lockdown. Scoos is going to take care of that as we head back Keith's way. Now, this is one of those games where not a lot of cards are in the graveyard here for Keith. So what we saw in game number 1, to be able to deploy the Swarm and the Diamond Weapon on the cheap, we're not really seeing that so much. We're seeing a lot more interaction and Up the Beanstalk on the battlefield. Up the Beanstalk is a little bit of a strange addition into his deck, simply because, you know, when we think of Up the Beanstalk, we think about the Overlords and so many things that Matt Nass used to win the Pro Tour just a handful of months ago, Leyline Binding, so on and so forth. This is just, my creatures are cheap, I get to draw a card, and that's not so bad either. So Haywire Might's going to take care of that Overlord for good. And now Scavenging Ooze.
Should be exiled.
Yeah, Scavenging Ooze stands alone.
Yeah, and Scavenging Ooze is a good card to stand alone here. Jackson does have that Meringue River region in hand, so has the ability to go for the coil and catch Omen side of it to draw some cards and try to set up here. But the discard isn't going to be helping you when you don't really have access to your graveyard safely with that Ooze in play.
Oh, there's the Swarm.
Yeah, and I think Jody's coped hard enough, because I think we're in good shape here.
Dare I say Jody Keith is cooking. Dare I say. There's the river region. That's going to bounce those 2 creatures, but they can just be deployed again as Keith will draw a card. And if you deploy that Husk Burster Swarm again, that's another card.
It sure is.
From the Up the Beanstalk, because Jody's going to, looks like, mill a couple of cards here from Rubble Belt Maverick. There's a bunch of cards in this deck that, you know what, as we were getting prepared for this tournament, there are a lot of words, a lot of syllables, a lot of cards where I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen that one in a while, Jody. What are you up to? Can I read all of the cards in your deck to just make sure I know what's going on? But these cards, you know, weirdly enough, Monty, they all work pretty darn well together.
They sure do. Notably, Jody did just pass the turn without having Scavenging Ooze represented. There's a copy of Haywire Might sitting on top of the deck, but that's not available right now. So Jackson has a turn, and we know it's not a turn that he's able to do anything with, but if he was able to go Roiling Dragonstorm, discard an Omniscience, Boiler's Awakening, he could have started cooking there.
Yep, but he was not able, so now here's a Get Lost that's going to take care of the Swarm. A couple of map tokens on the way here for Keith. And that Rubble Belt Maverick will deal 1 point of damage. So we are in a weird, like, kind of grinded out game here for Jackson Knorr and Omniscience, who does not have any of the combo nonsense going on and is just kind of playing an honest game, attacking with a very large flyer. And now Keith has to figure out what his game plan is, because he's not really doing his thing with cheap diamond weapons and Husk Burster Swarms. So we are in grimy territory here. This one's an ugly one. Those are the fun ones to me. So map token, let's see where this is going.
Yeah, it's weird, because typically the fair plan of this Omniscience deck, when you get a river region on the battlefield and you're starting to attack for 6 in the air, this fair plan is pretty darn strong. It ends the game pretty darn quick. But the problem is, that's the case against a deck like Is It Prowess, for example, where once you've stabilized things, a large creature goes a long way. When you're racing against this Golgari Graveyard deck, all of their creatures are massive. So things get a lot tougher. And right now, Jackson's looking okay, but as soon as Jody finds one more threat to add on to this board, like that Overlord of the Bailmark on the top of the library here, which he's keeping, things are going to be really good for him.
And you see Jody spreading around those map tokens a little bit. So the +1/+1 on the Ooze, a +1/+1 on the Rubble Belt Maverick, mana up to activate the Ooze a couple of times and simply passing the turn back. And remember, Scavenging Ooze can target both graveyards, so he might have some interest in actually taking care of some of the stuff in his own graveyard to grow the Ooze and gain a little bit of life, as we are in a weird sort of racing situation. So Ooze is going to target a couple of creatures in his graveyard.
You're all right if I fast track this? Sorry? Fast track it.
And it looks like Souls of the Lost and the Swarm going to make the Ooze into a 6/6. Jody will gain a little bit of life up to 13. We're going to head back Keith's way. Partner, we know what the draw step is.
We do, and Jody identified that I don't actually need these cards in the graveyard. One of the risks to doing the Scavenging Ooze Exile is, okay, if you draw a diamond weapon, if you draw another Husk Burst or Swarm, you don't have the tools in the graveyard to play them for the cheap. But when you're in a race situation like this, you know your draw is going to be Overlord of the Bailmark, you know what's going to happen, and it's all about racing. Growing your Ooze by 3, gaining 3 life, putting yourself at a point where you are suddenly ahead in life from your opponent, well, that's just excellent.
Yeah. No More Lies is going to take care of the Overlord for good, so no Scavenging Ooze interaction there, because it doesn't actually go to the graveyard when it's countered. It actually gets exiled, so exiled it will be. Jody maybe not thrilled with his play there, knocked his head a little bit, but the New Orleans native is going to play a Haywire Might and simply pass the turn back over to Jackson Knorr, who has been emotionless through the majority of this match. But if I had the opportunity to get in that brain, I would think he is not thrilled with how these games have gone. Looked like he might be able to win game number 1, struggled there, and now can no longer even attack. The racing is gone because the Ooze is causing so much trouble. Looks like that Regent is going to be on blocking duty to ideally give him another turn. This match has really gotten away from the player on the top line.
Yeah, it's part of the issue with mulliganing with this deck, but it's also definitely the issue with not winning game one. Not to say that was in Jackson's control or not, that's just how the draw is played out. But when you lose game one in this matchup and suddenly your opponent gets access to all of these powerful sideboard cards, we've already seen Scavenging Ooze and both copies of Haywire Might plus Duress this game. So if we talked about, 8 cards coming in for Jody out of the sideboard, and he's drawn 4 of those cards, he's drawn half of his sideboard hate, you can see the impact that they have on a game like this.
Yeah, they've all been pretty darn good this game. Scavenging Ooze hasn't, stopped the Boiler's Awakening technically from being cast, but it does have this alternate mode of I can get pretty big pretty fast, and I can kill you pretty fast, and that's kind of what's going on here as a Scrap Shooter's going to join the battlefield here. Knorr's going to draw another card, and I don't know if it's a good one. Well, it's at least a start here in a Roiling Dragonstorm. So that one's going to come on down. He will draw 2 cards and discard here in just a moment. But again, it's the power of the Scavenging Ooze as Omniscience goes into the graveyard. It looks like maybe a temporary lockdown is going to show up. Okay, well, that's a little bit interesting, but the Haywire Might's going to blow that up with the trigger on the stack, so none of these creatures are going to go anywhere. But most importantly here, there's not going to be any real reset. And a fist bump means that we are all done. Jody Keith, in the matchup that he said he could not win. Oh, he didn't just win. He got the broom out, partner. 2-0 against Omniscience?
Yeah, he made that look pretty easy, I would say. He knew where his breakpoints were. He knew what his strategy needed to be should he be given the window, which wasn't a guarantee by any means, but Jackson stumbled at just the right points, didn't have that turn 4 Boiler's Awakening in game 1. Game 2, all of the sideboard hate came out and just stopped him from getting that ball rolling, and then things snowballed, because that's what this Golgari Graveyard deck does, right? The whole point of being able to play cheap creature after cheap creature after cheap creature is the game gets out of hand, and that's what happened.
The goal coming into this tournament for Jody was, if I just kind of go 4-4 through constructed, 5-5, like have an even record there, he said he'd be totally fine with that. He said he felt his strength wasn't limited.
Yeah.
He 3-0'd limited, which is where he felt he was good at. That's how he qualified for this tournament at that Spotlight Series. And now he's 1-0 in constructing and just beat his worst matchup. Maybe that's a player we'll have on our leaderboard for quite a bit. For now, we're going to take a short break. We have so much more Magic to bring you. Will it be a green-black graveyard deck that's not supposed to be Omniscience? Well, no, because Quinn Tonole is going to be in the feature match. You know what that means.
Yeah, red.
Let's go. See you soon. Welcome back, everybody, to Pro Tour Final Fantasy here in Las Vegas, Nevada. You may have just seen that MagicCon's coming to Atlanta in September, but we are here right now in Sin City, where we just watched Jody Keith get the job done with some crazy Golgari graveyard deck in a matchup that he's certainly not supposed to win, but he found a way to do so anyway against Azorius Omniscience. And now we return to your regularly scheduled program, because we're going to watch Is It Prowess here in just a moment against Mono Red Aggro. Two decks that we expected to see a lot of coming into the tournament. Now, did we expect 40%? Let me say that again. 40% of Is It Prowess?
Yeah, it's time to rage, I think.
That's a lot of those.
Yeah, it's a lot. And you know what? Quinn Tonole, I have a lot of respect for him.
Me too.
He is a mage who plays one way, and I want to be very clear. It's not that he can't play any other way. He's very good at Magic and has a very wide range.
Yes.
He chooses to play one way. He enjoys this lane.
He very much does, and he's very good at it. Mono Red, top finish, which was last year, also with Mono Red. A 2-1 record in the limited format, going up against the inaugural, the first Super Series winner? Spotlight Series, thank you. Spotlight Series winner, Nick Odenheimer, who, that was in Atlanta, and now we can never take that away.
Correct.
All right, you are the first to get the job done and hoist the trophy in that tournament circuit. And now, with Is It Prowess, the deck to beat.
Yeah.
But how does it do against Mono Red?
Yeah, I was casting that event, and Nick was playing the Leyline red deck, so he's been going through the evolutions of the best versions of the reigning red deck in Standard. And definitely this can be a tough matchup for Prowess, as we've seen the evolution of Mono Red in Standard. The latest edition, 4 copies of Magebane Lizard in the main deck, have really made things tougher for the Prowess deck. But one thing that I can say for Nick is he came ready this weekend, because the latest deck is Roaring Furnace for the sideboard. He's got 2 of them in the main deck here.
Well, one thing that happens in this matchup, because mountains and red cards are involved, is things happen quickly. So we saw a turn 1 Heartfire hero into an Emberheart Challenger. Both those things are long gone. A Braid took care of one, blocking with the Otter from Storm Chaser's Talent was the other. But now we see some key 3-drops from both players. On one side, it's a Screaming Nemesis, a card that we see plenty in mono red strategies. On the other is a new one, but it appears to be a very good one here in Vivi from Final Fantasy. The consensus opinion on this card, Monty, is that if you get the opportunity to untap with it, it's lights out. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say so. It's very much a must-answer creature. It's the type of card where one turn with it is usually one turn too many, and that is sort of the stabilizing factor in this mono red against Is It Prowess matchup, especially when Quinn doesn't have a Magebane Lizard in play, because now Nick just gets to go ham.
Well, we're going to see if Nick does go ham here, because it's going to be a stock up. That's going to trigger VV. Damage going to be dealt over to Quinn, fall down to 19. Stock up, one of the most powerful card drawing spells of all time, printed in Ether Drift. And so we will see Nick take a look at the top 5, take 2 with him. Rest are going to go on the bottom, so it looks like Odenheimer has found 2 cards that he's happy with. One of them is a Shivan Reef. Coming up next is a Monstrous Rage. That targets the VV. Trigger 1. It's going to make it a little bigger. Monstrous Rage means +2/+0, plus, of course, that monster roll. And now the VV activation means I think I'm looking at 5 mana, some combination of blue and red?
Yeah, so VV isn't the number of counters on it. It's its power, so it plays really nicely with Monstrous Rage. And once you start doing this, oh, things are very terrifying.
Yeah, this is that whole if you untap with this thing, you probably win thing, which is why you're going to see a lot of this card in blue-red strategies. Now, not all. It's not a consensus opinion that you play this card in the main deck. It lives in the 75 oftentimes somewhere, but clearly you're seeing Odenheimer using this, and now he's using This Town Ain't Big Enough to target his own card, Storm Chaser's Talent, just target Quinn's card there in Heartfire Hero, and this is getting pretty filthy.
Yeah, that secondary set of columns on the right of Nicholas's life total board there, that's his mana. So he's keeping track of just how much mana he has to work with to do all of the things that he's doing here. And when all of the things involve completely clearing your opponent's board and getting in for the large majority of their life total, putting them to 5, Yeah, there's no real way for Mono Red to remove this VV at this point. You have to kill your opponent.
Yeah, now it's all about going to the face if you're Quinn Tonole. Face is the place, and I don't know if he's got enough to get the job done just yet, but he will know better than I, as he is a Mono Red master through and through. It was a very good start for Tonole with Hard Fire Hero and Ember Heart Challenger, but clearly not good enough because we just all saw what happens when you untap with VV.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a big onus on Quinn to be able to remove it. And Nicholas understands that if he's able to untap with VV, it's going to be great for him. If he's not, he's already going to lose. So there is no real decision point of, oh, I can't afford to run out VV here. What if he has a removal spell? He has to go for it and just hope it's not there. And this time he was rewarded, and we see how big the reward can actually be.
Yeah, because with all the stuff that we just saw with VV, with the Monstrous Rage and all the spells that are cast, also gets to attack too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there is a win to find here, Quinn will find it. I don't believe there is. Looking at his hand, he seems a little too limited on mana, unfortunately. But he is doing the math. He is trying.
And we're going to start things off in the Monastery Swift Spear. Oh, okay. Well, face is the place. Block with the Otter token. Otter's going to get in the way, and Quinn says, we will live to fight another day. So, Nicholas Odenheimer is going to win game number 1 here over Quinn Tonole. A very nice game win indeed. If you wanted to come see VV do its thing, you just have the opportunity to, and it is really something. Now, Mono Red on the play again. Of course, we're exactly where it wants to be. So Tonole is going to start things off with the Mountain and simply pass the turn back. So no Swift Spear, no Hard Fire Hero. Maybe perhaps a removal spell, as there's a sleight of hand, nothing to target if it is a removal spell. So Torch the Tower among the options here for Odenheimer. And Torch the Tower is the selection. We know that. Quinn doesn't, but he may find out soon enough, as there's an Ember Heart Challenger coming across into the red zone.
Yeah, Tonole gets access to some help out of the sideboard. Copies of Lithomantic Barrage coming in, one of the most popular sideboard choices this weekend, just for this reason. And being able to get on the board with a Screaming Nemesis always feels good, getting some damage through. But when your board is being contained to one creature, you're not entirely happy about it, and this is why.
You hear about this thing?
Yeah.
You seen this thing before?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
First time, Corey Steelcutter is showing up here at Pro Tour Final Fantasy. That's for sure. As here is Screaming Nemesis being redeployed. You saw Corey Steelcutter into the Flood Maw to bounce the Screaming Nemesis, which of course Tonole has just redeployed, and now Burst Lightning is going to take care of that Monk token, but the Corey Steelcutter is still on the battlefield. That's what makes that artifact, so problematic. I have to imagine another Monk token will be coming here soon. His stock up is almost going to guarantee that. So another copy of Into the Flood Maw has been found among the options. So, looks like Odenheimer's happy. Going to put those 3 cards in the bottom, 2 to the grip, stock up to the graveyard, and it'll be into the Flood Maw again. So, Screaming Nemesis, you go away. Monk will come to play, and that's going into the red zone once again here, partner. This is what this matchup looks like. It's cheap spells just back and forth.
Yeah, for those who have been with us through the years of professional Magic, this prowess deck plays very similar to Is It Phoenix. It's all about managing your resources and aiming for a magic number of spells per turn that allows you to sustain pressure. For Phoenix, that number was 3. For Prowess, it's 2, just being able to trigger this Corey Steelcutter every turn if possible. So that's always a good feeling. And when you get that Magebane Lizard down, you're like, okay, great. Maybe I can stop my opponent from doing something. But 3 copies of Into the Flood Maw means that Quinn just can't stay on the board. And yes, he's pressuring Nicholas's life total. That is something that's very relevant. But as long as Nicholas can continue drawing cards and setting up this hand, he's going to be able to stop Quinn from getting over the finish line.
And this is what kind of the appeal is of blue-red. You have, of course, Steelcutter draws. You have these stock-ups to refuel. Of course, stock-up triggers Prowess itself. It just feels like you have unlimited game actions as you over the course of a game. And that's not necessarily true, but it's certainly what it feels like. And you certainly feel like also you have a lot of agency over what's going on in the games that you play.
Yeah, I think agency is definitely the magic word. I think that's one thing that is the most common through line between professional Magic players is they just enjoy agency in the game. That's why they are drawn to decks like this, sometimes it gets oversimplified to drawing cards. Magic players like drawing cards, but that's not really about the drawing cards itself. It's what the cards give you.
Yeah.
It's feeling like the game was always in your control. You were making decisions to win or lose, and it was about the gameplay actions that you were able to take that got you across the finish line.
Here's that Magebane Lizard again. And looks like a Hired Claw is going to join it. A Screaming Nemesis comes across for another 3 points of damage. So as good as it all has looked here for Odenheimer, right? We've seen stock ups. We've seen 3 copies of Into the Flood Maul. We've seen Corey Steelcutter. We've seen just some awesome turns of using all the mana. What do we see that turn? That was a land and say go. Perhaps out of gas? We'll have to see. And this Magebane Lizard is definitely going to have an impact on things.
Yeah, from what I can see, Nick's hand is a land and a copy of Corey Steelcutter. One other card that I can't quite make out, but this is not the type of hand that's going to win you this game, and it very much looks like Quinn has managed to weather the storm of these Into the Flood Maws in order to push this game over the finish line.
So you see the blocks here from Odenheimer. See if there's anything instant speed related. There's not. There's a Burst Lightning there from Quinn Tonole, and that's going to get the job done. So again, we see stock ups, we see Into the Flood Maws, we see Corey Steelcutter, and what we see is a win for Mono Red Aggro. So a third and final is where we're going to head here for this matchup. This time, and for the first time, Odenheimer in this matchup is on the play.
Yeah, definitely a very big deal being able to get that play draw in your favor. Of course, starting out with Storm Chaser's talent, this is huge. I think there's a huge difference between the games where Izzet Prowess gets to start with this card versus not. It's kind of innocuous, but at this point, we've all seen just how much this card is capable of outputting.
This will be a Magebane Lizard here from Tonole. And this is kind of the big innovation that we have seen in mono-red strategies to combat the Izzet Prowess decks. It's pretty problematic, it's pretty annoying, and it's pretty darn powerful. It's also pretty darn dead right now, as that Adar token is going to come across into the red zone once again. Now the question here is, does Tonole perhaps have another copy of Magebane Lizard? And again, it's very powerful in the matchup if it gets to stay on the battlefield. First one didn't, maybe a second one will. Looks like it's going to be just an Emberheart Challenger and an attack, and now a Hired Claw and passing the turn back.
Yeah, we've seen the innovation of the Furnace coming out from some of the Izzet Prowess decks as a way to deal with the Lizard, usually out of the sideboard, now in the main deck for Nick. And in the sideboard, he has that Rebel Salvo that we saw in order to have further answers to the trump card of the matchup in the Lizard.
Corey Steelcutter's first, Torch the Tower is second. It was bargained for, it looks like, so a little bit of extra damage there and exiling and all that jazz. So not a bad thing if you can do it, and Torching the Tower is what did take place, excuse me, so that's why you saw the Scry one. So let's see what the follow-up's going to be here for Tonole, who's got to play a little bit of catch-up here. This is, again, the first time that he's actually on the draw in this matchup. Lost game 1 on the play, of course, won the second one, fairly straightforward. Now the third one, things get a little more difficult. It's not like this mono red deck is the best at blocking, partner.
No, and he has the type of hand that you don't want to see in this position. It's all reactive. How we saw Quinn winning game 2 was he had access to that Screaming Nemesis. So every turn, Nick was doing what he could to keep that off the board or keep the Lizard off the board and get a little bit of development. But the inevitability factor for Quinn was that Nemesis was attacking every turn and getting that damage through.
Yep.
He has one Hired Claw. He has a Soulstone Sanctuary that's not a creature right now. And his hand is just all reactive. It's a Monstrous Rage that is only great when you're actually pressuring, which he's not right now. It's a Burst Lightning, and it's a Witch Stalker Frenzy. Against the Corey Steelcutter, this is not the game plan.
Yeah, you mentioned the Burst Lightning. That gets cast to take care of the Otter token as we head back over to Odenheimer. And because Odenheimer's not really underneath any duress, this would be a good turn for a 3-mana spell, and that is certainly one of them.
Oh, that
here
one?
in
that
VV.
One?
Oh, this old 1-2 punch. You familiar with this thing? We got VV plus Monstrous Rage back. All right, so
I've seen this before.
that's also going to trigger the Corey Steelcutter. Don't forget that VV is going to ding upstairs here to Tonole as well. And let's see what the follow play is going to be.
Yeah, Corey Steelcutter, notably, unlike a lot of the cards that we typically see in blue-red strategies that trigger off of your second non-creature spell, it's just your second spell. VV counts. Yeah, why not?
And so now here's a stock up.
Yeah, Stock Up is a bit of a soul-crushing card to see your opponent cast. It's so much gas, it's so much card selection, and it is just a lot of times, it feels like when your opponent casts the first stock up, you're like, oh, God. And then when they cast the second stock up, you're like, all right, we're done.
Yeah, it's basically over.
Yeah.
The second stock up is just too much to handle. And this kind of exchange is also just a ton to handle as well, right? As there's the Witchstalker Frenzy that's going to take care of that Monk token. But that's not the ideal use for that because, as you mentioned, this deck, this mono red deck, it wants to be very proactive. It doesn't want to be terribly reactive. And Quinn draws another land and immediately does extend the hand. Nicholas Odenheimer is going to win this game and match. Is it prowess off the back of Vivi from Final Fantasy is going to get him the dub. Very fun and powerful matchup, and I like seeing Vivi in action.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of debate within the players coming into this weekend of Vivi or no Vivi in the Is It Prowess decks. We've seen the numbers fluctuating heavily across the board. Some teams decided it's only a sideboard card. I want it for certain matchups. I don't want it in the main. And I think Nicholas made it look really good there. But it does have to be noted that the answers to Magebane Lizard was what really enabled Nicholas to just be able to continue burying Quinn in that game.
Yeah, the power of stock up, the power of Vivi, those 3-mana spells, maybe the best way to build Is It. We will see. Speak of the devil, it shall appear. Max Rappaport, Is It Prowess? Again, 40% of the standard portion of this tournament, so we're going to see it quite a bit. Going up against Raul, who is playing Azorius Omniscience. So this has been also the fun conversation of this particular tournament is, all right, Omniscience 20%. Is It Prowess? 40%. How does Azorius Omniscience do against Is It Prowess? Well, most Prowess players say, I win a lot of the games after sideboard, so they have to beat me game one. And if they don't win game one, they can't win the matchup. Perhaps that's true, perhaps it's not. We'll have to see. What we do know for sure is that Max, oh, well, he did his job. He won game one.
Oh, yeah, he broke serve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we have to say about this Omniscience deck is no matter how consistent you make it, and it is quite consistent, there is still a fail rate in this deck. It's not always going to be able to get across the finish line and do its thing. And when you fall behind, when you start losing these game ones, suddenly the match gets a lot harder for you. This is something that we've seen age-old in Magic combo decks. If they have that insane game one win percentage, that doesn't mean they are going to win every match.
That's correct.
You still have to get that game one done and then close out a sideboard game against hate.
So let's zoom in here as we're in middle of game number 2. Looks like there's a Raul in the battlefield, a Storm Chasers, Talent, a Roiling, Dragonstorm, and his Raul Crackling Wit, of course. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a loyalty counter on Raul, and, you know, that elevator goes up and down and all around. +1 will make you an outer token. -3 will draw you a couple of cards as well. And that ultimate, well, if it does come up, I'm going to assume the game is ended, so we're not going to care too much about the whole draw 3 cards emblem aspect of the card. Max is kind of cooking right now with building out a little bit of a wider battlefield with Otters and Storm Chasers Talent, maybe bringing back some things on the other side, though, for Raul. Kind of looks like maybe on the struggle a little bit. You know, not too many permanents on the battlefield, and most importantly, the namesake card Omniscience isn't on the battlefield either.
Yeah, I think this is maybe a concerning trend that we're seeing in this first round of Standard. Of course, a lot of Standard to be played, but the Omniscience decks are not doing the thing that they are designed to do. Of course, this is a sideboard game. We are joining in the middle of the action, so we don't really know what's happened earlier on, but I do see 2 copies, I think, of Abuelo's Awakening there in Raul's graveyard, so there has been some gameplay actions taken. Maybe they were discarded because he couldn't find an Omniscience. Maybe they were countered by a Spell Pierce from the other side. But the end result is the same, which is Raul very far behind on board.
And the goal, if you're a prowess player at this stage of things, is now that you're hypothetically ahead, now you're just looking for roughly counter magic, just a way to stop anything big from happening. And this does qualify as a big thing happening.
Yeah, and you can't do anything about that one because Cavern of Souls on the battlefield, on Dragon, means that your River Regent is resolving here. That's coming down.
And the Meringue River Regent is down. It's going to return a couple of non-land permanents over to Max's hand. So on Raul's end step, Max is going to play an opt, and we'll see what this yields.
We see the Otter gone, we see the Raul gone, and of course for Raul, he gets to pick up his own Roiling Dragonstorm, excuse me. So that is more ability to dig. I think there is a copy of Abuelo's Awakening in hand for him, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't see an Omniscience in the yard as far as I can see.
I can't see one yet either, but doesn't take much to get one in there if the Roiling Dragonstorm does cooperate. So we will see, as now here is VV. A little bit of a shoulder shrug there. I think one thing we might be learning very quickly about this tournament is that VV should be everywhere.
Yeah, you know, I said there was a lot of debate between the players. I'm going to wait another few rounds of Constructed and then maybe survey the players again and be like, so, how you feeling about it now?
Yeah, so what are we, what are we thinking now about this thing? Here is a stock up. I think everybody's agreed on this card. It's very, very powerful. Best in blue-red as 2 cards are coming, and Max is going to put 3 on the bottom. So the very powerful sorcery is done resolving. Will be placed in the graveyard here in just a moment. Let's see what else Max wants to do on this turn. This is one of those things where VV is a 3-mana spell, Stock Up's a 3-mana spell. You know, when you're getting run over, they don't look great. But when a game kind of looks a little bit more like this, where these players are actually kind of going back and forth a little bit, this is where VV and Stock Ups kind of shine because you've got time to work with.
Yeah, and this is sort of not the death knell, but the start of things going very downhill for Raul quickly is when Soul Guide Lantern hits the battlefield. Because now you're saying, when you try to do your thing that you've been unable to do so far, I have access to the answer.
Yeah.
So now you need your thing, and you need to be able to get through this. And that's asking a lot for not that many resources. Now, Meringue River region, still huge.
Yeah, and I think this might be the key, which is if I am Raul and I just draw running river regions, that might just be the avenue to victory, because the whole graveyard thing, that's not a thing anymore. The omniscience and the combo and all that jazz, not so much. So it might just be, hey, big dragons, plural, they can get the job done for me. And this strategy is not looking so bad, especially because they're uncounterable.
Yeah, I think it's really speaking to the innovation of this deck that you're seeing Cavern of Souls make it into an omniscience combo deck. This is a real plan. Being able to access these dragons and force them through, this is a big impact to have on the board. And using that Spell Pierce there to counter what was essentially a tempo this town ain't big enough means that Raul doesn't want to give Max that much time. He just wants to put 12 damage on the board and say, all right, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So the plan there was the Regent bounced a couple of creatures. Max fought back, but this town ain't big enough, trying to bounce a Regent and his own Storm Chaser's talent, but a very timely Spell Pierce there from Raul said, I don't think so. I want to keep my dragons on the battlefield, thank you very much, and that all worked out just fine. So VV back in hand, among other things here for Max, and it looks like that might be where to start the turn again here for our Is It Prowess players. So there the legendary wizard is. And let's see what the follow-up's going to be.
Yeah, and one thing that is really nice about Meringue River region is just how large it is. 6/7, that is a large dragon.
So there's Lithomantic Barrage now.
That's 5.
Yep, Chapter 2 on the Storm Chaser's talent, and now cast it again. Vivi's going to ding. Also, of course, get a little bit larger, and so that problem is solved right now if you're Max. Also pretty important here that Max is at 11, not 12 as far as the math is concerned. Of course, the Regent is a 6-power creature, so as things currently stand, it's going to take 3 attacks, not 2, to get the job done, as there's the Archaeologist, going to reveal a couple of cards in Temporary Lockdown, Roiling Dragonstorm, and a Plains.
Yeah, and I think something that you can do here by picking up the Temporary Lockdown there, if your Raul, is you can just force Max to have to use this Soul Guide Lantern or lose it at some point. And that means that you can put yourself in a position where if you can get that Omniscience in the yard, you're able to combo off. And one River Regent, I don't think is a fast enough clock right now. I think that's something that Max can definitely deal with. 2 was a problem. Max dealt with the second one. So suddenly, Raul does have to worry about the game state again.
The Regent's going to bring Max down to 7, and now here is temporary lockdown. Looks like that's going to resolve. So Soul Guy Lantern's trigger, well, we'll see exactly what's going to go on with this here, so I will wait patiently. And now it is going to bite the dust along with Storm Chaser's talent. So those are all temporarily, underneath that white enchantment. And there's Meticulous Archive, a little surveil action here. Looks like that card is going to stay on top here for Raul, and not a bad turn from the Omniscience player.
Not a bad turn. Vivi's still on the board, though. So that is one thing to worry about.
Oh, what's the worst that could happen? Come on. Come on.
Yeah, no.
It's just a 2-power creature.
It's just a little mage.
Yeah. Look at that cute little wizard.
Yeah. I believe Max has 2 cards in hand. I think. I'm not actually sure. We don't have access to the hand information here. Raul does have a copy of Abuelo's Awakening in hand. That we know for sure. 4 cards in hand for Max, excuse me.
Yeah, quite a bit more than 2. And
Yeah.
whenever one is looking to see what's under the temporary lockdown, that's not the best feeling, because that kind of presumes that the lockdown's going to leave the battlefield. But we'll see. Don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. We know there's a Raul in hand among other options, so let's see exactly where Max does want to kick things off. Looks like it will be Raul, Crackling Wit, trigger Vivi, ding you 1, down to 13. Again, don't forget, Vivi doesn't have a defender.
Nope.
Great, I missed that.
Can attack. So these players will make sure they have the correct life totals. We're all set there.
Yeah, and Raul did have to pay 1 life using a Darker Waste to cast that temporary lockdown.
Sure.
So maybe that got missed in Max's calculations, but certainly this is where Vivi is at his scariest. Didn't need to deal 1 damage, Cedric. You think that was necessary?
Well, depends on what you like. Depends on what you like. Looks like a sleight of hand here. And now another sleight of hand trigger. Looks like Raul's making that climb a little bit too here. You know, I said that minus, I think it was minus 10.
Yeah.
I think I said that might not matter that much.
Yeah.
Might have been wrong about that.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good 11.
We are definitely at a point where Vivi is not added mana yet.
No.
So
No, it hasn't.
number go up.
And also, Raul hasn't been activated yet either. So the whole, you know, draw 3, discard a couple of cards. Vivi might be thinking about ending this one all on its own.
Yeah, this might be the last turn of the game. We'll see.
All right, sleight of hand's done resolving, so found the card. Okay, so this will be the old draw 3, 1 and a 2 and a 3. A couple copies of Into the Flood Maw. Discard 1, discard. There's 2.
Yeah.
All right.
Corey Steelcutter, don't need that one to win this game.
That's a good. That's probably good news.
Yeah, no, that's a good sign.
Here's Storm Chaser's talent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tapped out.
Tapped out. Yes. Always a good question, by the way. Just I want to confirm, you have access to no mana and can do nothing.
You cannot stop me.
Got it.
From doing what I'm about to do to you.
Into the Flood Maw. Bounce that, trigger, deal you 1. Vivi has 10 counters. You're at 9.
I think that's 7.
Is that a 6, maybe?
Yeah, that's a
okay.
6. Only 7.
Give it a sec.
Yeah.
Give it a
Hold
sec.
on. Let's make 7 mana.
Okay.
Get back.
Oh, get down. What does this do?
Yeah. Cool card.
3 floating.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 floating. This town. Yeah. Last I checked, it is not close to big enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to
Yeah.
do it. Hello.
There it
Hello,
is.
Vivi. How are you? Max Rappaport just showed us all the power of this 3-mana wizard. I hope you like Wizard Prowess, and I hope those who played it registered Vivi, because what?
Yeah. Really need to talk to these players about how they feel about Vivi after today.
Yeah, I think after this
Yeah.
round, you and I maybe go have a little chit-chat
Yeah.
with the folks out there.
How are we feeling?
You untap with that thing?
Yeah.
It's over. It's over. Wow.
It's going to be a fun
Oh
weekend.
my goodness. That's unbelievable. This is going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah.
We've got lots of Wizard Prowess. We've got Azorius Omniscience, Mono Red. And let's just say one thing. If you're with us at the beginning of this round, Jody Keith feels like it was like an hour ago, has a black-green Golgari-based graveyard deck that he feels is very, very good against that strategy and just beat his worst matchup in Omniscience. So if he's right, he could be the hero that we all need. But that's for future rounds. This round's done. We have a news desk where they'll probably talk about VV2, and they should, because that card, what? We'll see you back here in Vegas just a bit.